Welcome to the January monthly market report for Keeping Current Matters. My name is David Childers, and I am excited to be with you for the beginning of this year, talking about everything happening in real estate. Listen, we're going to do that. I'm going to do a couple of things today, and I might go a little bit long. We normally try to keep these about 15, 20 minutes, may go a little over that, but I'm going to do a quick sort of recap how I tell the story of last year. I think everybody watching knows that, but I want you to have access to this information. Then we're going to go through everything our research team has compiled as far as forecast for the coming year and give you all of that. And then last, I'm going to kind of close out with where I believe, and it's very, very clear, the biggest opportunity is in the real estate market. So with that as a backdrop, let's go ahead and get started. All right, I chose this quote to kind of kick us off. Our team help me put this together, but Confucian philosopher, listen, stay with me on this. Not having heard of it is not as good as having heard it. That's certainly true, right? Having heard of it is not as good as having seen it. Having seen it is not as good as knowing it. We all can agree on that. And knowing it is not as good as putting it into practice. Learning arrives at putting it into practice. Listen, that's my encouragement to you as we start off the year with the monthly market report, is put this information into practice. There's so many studies that have been done. I'm looking at one here, they've done by Harvard and UCLA and all these universities on how people learn. And let me just give you that real quick. If you're listening to a lecture, if you're just listening to this podcast, you have about 5% of what you hear. If you read it, that number does 10%. That's the good news. Audio, visual, or demonstrated, it's likely to 30%. That's, you think about school and how we all grew up. 50% retention, that's kind of an analogy, right? Get into your group and work with the problem. Doing, practice by doing. You heard it, I'm going to do it. Retention increases 75%. What do you think it comes from doing and teaching others? So if you really want to say, David, how do I retain this information? Teach it to someone. Teach it to fire, teach it to yourself, teach it to someone in your team, your mom. Teach it to somebody. Share with them what you've learned. That will help you take information so that I encourage you to start the year. Take one ways that we can go and play it. What happened last year in 25? A couple of interesting things like vision. Tell somebody we can show them as well. First thing that happens, mortgage rate came down in 2025. Everybody knows that, hopefully listening to the monthly market report. But, we started off the year in 2025 up around 10% in the 30%. We came down by the end, kind of in the low sixes, around even right now, 0.2. We're in observation that comes to us. Most forecasts into it in a massive decrease in the country. Price growth cool off over the last year. This is a look at the map. I chose this map view because of a couple of things. One, depending on where you're at, 3% appreciation over year as the third quarter's most recent information we have. But depending on where you're at in the country, you saw the releasing quickly. What we've seen prior is inventory is growing. I have this graphic right here from Realtor.com. It's the white bar is this year. I'm sorry, last year. The years below the bar, 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24. It's above it. We're on the past year. I said, we'll probably end this year somewhere in the neighborhood of where we were in 17, 18, 19. That's certainly happening. So that's the story, right? Mortgage down most quickly. The home market. And here, what are in the nuance? I believe the world understands the national market effort that we value. My question is, always mind is, what's that? What is the piece of content? You say, here's my route, I teach it. We talked about this to someone. The words here, steadier and stronger. I do believe that will be the case going into we go spring market in the summer and steadier, but not yet. That's important. That's an interesting sort of word picture, right? Reality, the results from our expectations of slightly lower interest rates, only modest increases in home prices, more balanced markets going to contribute to affordability. I'll give you the top 4 bills. Keep in mind what's ability, prices, and wages. I just saw a report that wages will have down over the last year, bouncing around 6. We'll get into that in just a second, but I think we'll be in a rate environment. Prices not going up. All this bode well for a great topic. I have a lot of competitions like folks on affordability. Lauren, we go next more better. We have a modest. I want to see more people do it. So the forecasts say right now, if you think about this topic, expect a modest decline in rates. This rates. There's that old saying: when rates go up, they take the escalator. When they come down, they take the stairs. And certainly now here, as I record this January, and it's around 6.2, 6.4 range. excuse me, between 6.25% and 6%. I think we'll dip our toe in the fives. I don't think we'll stay there. I think opportunistically some people think that. And that's true. Realtor.com, while this puts the average 30-year fixed mortgage rate on par with the last few months of 2025, it will mark a drop from 6.6 on average throughout 2025. But we're on par the last couple of months, which, oh, by the way, were mortgage applications in the last couple of months. We saw more buyers say now is the time. I expect that will be the case. We'll get the main transaction. Thing about said this, we're relieved. Affordability and growth outpaces price growth. That's a good. I think right now the biggest on Americans' minds is home affordability. Is affordability in general in the world, but certainly I think a lot of can we do it? So talk about what's happening, affordability mortgage rates that are sort of predicted. What about prices? What's going to happen with prices? Are such a phenomenon. Everybody says here's here 4% home price appreciation next year. Coming down 0.3%, and anywhere and everywhere in the right? 4%. I don't see anybody calling for 10% to blow the doors off. I don't see a lot of people calling for prices where 1% in prices. Be very much dependent upon the area of the country that you're in. But I think on average, we'll probably see 1 to 2% home price in the country. That's a thing, right? Numbers are likely to be this market. With states in the South and West, like see price market in the Midwest, there's more inventory. There'll be softer markets. There's less inventory. There'll be markets that'll have an impact on price. No doubt, if you live in one of those markets, I'm not going to improve honestly in 26. I believe that. I think affordability is going to improve. No doubt about it. So if we give them outlook on what experts are saying, you can counter that with, hey, here in our part of the country, but I see realtor teaching the buyers more purchasing power, helping to shrink the payment. Expected to slip to 29.3% of median income its first year below the 30%. That's good news. I think right now, if you look at what young people, even for somebody in a house, right? This is the Redfin study. The blue bar is wage growth, and the green bar is home price growth. So this goes over 20. It's a great little graphic to use on a video too. 2019, 2020, 2021, home prices control. And now we're in a place where wages are going up. That bodes well for affordability. Hale said this: buyers 26 offer a welcome, if modest, step towards a healthier housing market. Income's climbing faster than inflation as mortgage rates steady at a lower space. That's a good thing. It says this: national active listing room higher than it goes. That's certainly true. We talked about that. Looking into 26, the direction is still up. Even though I said they're going to pursue existing with some for buyers. That's a good thing, right? Inventories to grow this year, grew throughout last year. We talked about that, ending up in the range of 2017, 2018. Right, compass, 10% this year. That'll mean have impact on price, impact on sellers. A message right now, selling house, 10% more. They're sitting on a fair amount of inventory, so their starts are going to come. Projection is 1.5, so down slightly, closer to even. We definitely are going. We're not trying to surpass where we were last year. And in housing, we remain undersupplied. This is a look at new housing that started going all the way back to the 70s, and we just didn't have the starts in the last decade that we needed to keep up with population growth. And we all, I think, know the story of that. And at the end of the day, what we want to see is more inventory coming to market so that people can buy a home, still undersupplied. No doubt about that. Rick Sharga said inventory will continue to increase, though, at least partly due to the pace of sales slowing down and some older homeowners deciding it's time to downsize. Odetta Cushy, looking back, expect a two-speed market, lean inventory in the Northeast and Midwest keeps conditions relatively tight, price growth steadier, while parts of the South and West remain soft. I think this is giving you this picture of the 2026 real estate market, giving all of us this picture of the 2026 real estate market that we can provide our own outlook and commentary to. Lawrence Yun said, we expect higher inventory, modest improvements in affordability, and more accommodating monetary policy from the Federal Reserve that will help more Americans buy their next home. Let's certainly hope that is true. We want to see more people buy a home. Lisa Sturdivant said, while lower mortgage rates and more inventory will bring some buyers back, this will be a reset year, not a rebound year. Market performance will hinge on local economic conditions, making 26 one of the most geographically divided markets we've seen in years. I think that's going to be true. Depending on where you're at, it's going to dictate. Well, real estate's always local, but we come through these years where generally the same thing's happening in a lot of markets. Getting all of that information in your local market is going to be critical. The other thing that this is going to lead to is an improvement in existing home sales. Existing home sales are forecasted to grow by about 10%. 2024, about 4 million existing home sales, 25, 4.1 million once all the numbers kind of shake out, and about 4.5 this year. I think the bottom line to that is you'll see more people jumping into the market that didn't. You'll see mortgage rates help people that didn't. And we'll see a growth in sales given that. New home sales will tick up moderately. The last couple of years, we've sold about 680,000 new home sales. This year, forecasted to do a little over 700,000 new home sales. That's important. Total home sales, this all leads to existing and the new total home sales rising from about 4.7 to about 5.1. That's a good thing, right? We want to see more people get into a home and be able to achieve the dream of home ownership. Zillow buyers are benefiting from more inventory and improved affordability, while sellers are seeing price stability and more consistent demand. Each group should have a bit of breathing room in 2026. That's a good thing, right? We want to see this market be healthy and folks be able to buy homes, sell homes, and all that. Let's wrap up here. I'm going to spend just a few more minutes on where I believe the biggest opportunity is. Pay attention here because this information is very, very important to think about as you focus on where listings coming from right now. Probably the biggest opportunity is expired listings. I mentioned that before. Why is that? REDX said this: first week of 2026, 170,000 expired listings. That's $70 billion in this country in sales volume. People that didn't sell their house. Now, let me just put this number into sort of comparison and a perspective. 24 first week, about 129,000. First week of 25, 132,000. High to low estimates are 155, 185,000 listings expiring. We choose the middle of the road there, so 170,000. I think there are a couple of reasons. There's a disconnect in sellers' minds on where the market's at. They maybe are overpriced, whatever the case. is. And we can help them. We can step into that. And you can show them one, hey, your average 74 days when relisting with a new agent versus 89. I'd have these in my presentation if I was sitting down with an expired listing or somebody that didn't sell their house and they said, we want a new plan. Pricing strategy matters in a massive way. This is the probability of selling when relisting at different price points. So they don't, total 100%, but the probability when relisting at a higher price, 47%, lower price 45, and keeping the price the same 41%. So what do you take there? The biggest indicator of selling and moving a property is changing the price, whether it's higher or lower, depending on what the situation is. Keeping it the same statistically and probability wise, you have a lower probability of selling. That's interesting. Here's an interesting one. Half of expired sellers haven't relisted yet. So in 2025, 2.4 million listings expired. 1.3 of them still haven't relisted. That's 529 billion in sales volume. That's unreal. What is the other thing that we know as we've wrapped up last year? Delistings as a share of inventories hit a decade high. In the third quarter, 5.5% of homes that were listed for sale were delisted in that quarter. Why is that? I think there are a lot of people that had a different expectation that we're going to sell their house. They're like, you know what? Here's what's going to happen. Here's what we're going to sell it for. That didn't come true, and they said, just take it off the market. No doubt. Nearly half of delistings were purchased within the last 5 years. So these are people that had purchased in the last 5 years. Okay, so this is important. We want to understand where somebody's at. Many homeowners who bought during the pandemic demand still expect sky-high prices. They remember seller's market, so they're resistant to yield to buyers who want to negotiate the price. That's interesting, right? Pay attention. Sellers pay attention right now. That's what's most important. I want to wrap up here. I've got the slide that we always use. Most agents, I believe, know what's happening. Good ones understand it, but only great agents can explain what's happening in this market. All right, that was the January monthly market report. As always, it's such a privilege to get to deliver this to you, and thank you for being a KCM member. And listen, as we go throughout the year, if there are topics you want to see us cover, email me, David at Keeping Current Matters. I want to deliver those to you because they are topics that matter. We want to give you what you need to educate the clients that you serve so that you can be the expert out in the market. So happy January, happy New Year, and looking forward to the coming year.